I'm just going to do a quick crash course on looking after this Aqua One aquarium. So we've now got it running. It has got a air pump running and it has the filter running. Now what we've added to the water is we've added some water ager. So the water ager is going to take any chlorine or chloramone out of the water, and we want to add this every time we add new water to the tank. And if we ever have anything go wrong, if there's anything we're worried about, put in a 5 times dose of this, because this sort of fixes a lot of problems. It detoxifies ammonium nitrite. It's a whole lot of good stuff. So I don't want you going crazy with it, but you can add a little bit more than it tells you to, and you can add it any time that you're worried about your fish, and you can add it every time you add new fish, anytime you add new water. Now this one is KH. So when you bring a sample of water down to the shop, we will be checking your KH. Now over time, KH level has a tendency to fall. So depending on the fish that you've got, we may be telling you to add more of this, or at various times we may tell you to do a water change and don't add more of this. That's how you lower it. So it's really important when you come down to the shop, we need to see a video of your tank running, and we need to see any bits and pieces and fish foods and water ages and any stuff you've got for the tank, because we will need to advise what we may need to do in order to make sure that the water is right for the fish that you've chosen. This is a GH conditioner. We add that only when we're changing the water. We do not add this for top-ups. So when the water, you'll be surprised how fast the water evaporates, but you need to top it up. And when you top it up, you always use a water ager. If your KH was low, you could decide to use KH, but you never use GH when you're doing a top-up. You only ever use it for water changes. So when you take water out, you can add that in, and we will instruct you on these when you bring the sample down. Now there's also a scrubber. That's just for basically if you get a bit of a stubborn algae, you might want to give that a bit of a scourer. And then we've got some water, some good bacteria. This one has been dosed, and then you'd probably dose it again when you add new fish, or if you ever had a problem with ammonia or nitrite, or if you ever did anything major with the filter. So this one is best kept in the fridge. So we won't keep that down in the cupboard. That one should be in the fridge. Now when you fill the tank up, it's quite common to see little bubbles all over the walls, and that's just because there's high surface tension. Some people ring me and say there's something wrong with their fish, but there isn't. Now the filter is on, so you see the water coming up and trickling through here, and like that. And then eventually you'll see these get dirty. Now I, probably in about 4 to 6 weeks, I'd throw these cartridges away, and I wouldn't rebuy the cartridges. I would use polyfilter next time, because polyfilter will adsorb and absorb anything impure out of your water, and it will turn to black to tell you when it's full. Whereas this one, you won't know when it's full, and it can release what it's collected. So let's say maximum 6 weeks, and then throw that away, replace it with polyfilter. Then you've got some sponge here. This sponge needs to be washed in water from the fish tank, and underneath here you've got some little balls, and those balls need to be washed in water from the fish tank, not water from the tap, because the good bacteria that grows inside there is what breaks down the waste from the fish. So it's really important that that you don't kill the good bacteria by cleaning it with tap water, because the tap water is going to contain chlorine. The chlorine will kill the good bacteria. So right now the tank can be filled up a little bit more, but when you buy your fish, they're probably going to come in some bags, so that will compensate for that. In a perfect world, you probably don't put the fish water into your new tank, but considering the shop's only around the corner from here, that you're not really going to go wrong with that. Now we've got the heater on, so there's a light on the heater right there. Now the light will turn on when the tank is below 25 degrees, and you can change the setting if you want. And then the thermometer is what tells you the temperature. The heater sets the temperature, and the thermometer tells you the temperature. So now, what do we do now? So now, if we waited a few days, that'd be cool. And we need the tank to stabilize at 25 degrees. Then you're going to grab your phone, you're going to make a video so we can see everything going on, and we can bring a sample of water and a video down to the shop. And then in that sample of water and video, I want to be able to see everything going on with the tank. And then we can recommend you some fish. I'd probably start with, say, a few top-dwelling fish, maybe mollies or something like that. And a top-dwelling fish is a fish where their mouth opens up. So if you got, say, 4 mollies, that'd be ideal. And then I wouldn't want to feed for the first couple of days. So no food for the first couple of days. And the food that I would want to be feeding is Spectrum's probiotics. And the reason why I want you to feed Spectrum's probiotics is the Spectrum probiotic has got a probiotic bacteria in the food, which means when the fish poo, the bacteria in the poo eats the poo. So it's a super, super clean food. Then in about, say, 2 weeks after your mollies have swum around and enjoyed their life, then I'd come down and bring another sample of water and another video and then consider putting some midwater fish in. Something like Harlequin Rasbora would be really nice, but a midwater fish is something that their mouths open forward. Then a couple of weeks after that, about a month down the track, I'd start looking at bottom dwellers. So Corydoras catfish running around the bottom would be cool. Bristlenose catfish for eating the algae would be cool. And it's good to have fish in there that are going to stir the bottom up and eat the algae. And there's lots of really cool options that you can get. Now, the other thing I will suggest is that change is king with an aquarium. So you set the aquarium up like this. It looks really cool. You love it. The fish swim around. But you do need to be a little bit realistic with your expectations, because the way I see fish working is you set it up. 1 year you love it, 1 year you like it, and then you've sort of seen it. So if you can walk past your aquarium, you don't have to look at it, then I would recommend, changing some plants or changing some fish or even changing the tank. Like, change is king. So keeping the same thing for too long, after a while, you've sort of mastered that and it's time to move on. So just don't ask me for marriage advice. As far as cleaning the tank's concerned, these things are great because you can just very easily and efficiently give that a bit of a clean, give the glass a clean. If you see your plants all getting dirty or your rocks getting dirty, easiest thing to do is throw it out in the sun for a day, and then the sun will bleach off the algae. Then flip it over, leave it in the sun for a day, hit it with a hose, and you'll be amazed how good they come up. But do consider the fake plants a little bit optional, a little bit disposable, because over time they do over years they do sort of need replacing, or they do look a bit ratty. And then the next thing I need to be very clear about is how clean your tank stays is governed by, number one, how many fish you've got and how big your fish are. So if you, let's say, overpopulated this tank and there was heaps of fish in there, then I would consider adding, like, for example, a second filter. So you might add like an internal filter or something like that. That would not be required if you were going to keep a normal amount of fish. But let's say that you're maybe a bit lazier than you should be, then overcompensating with filtration is great. Or if you're having too much fish, overcompensating with filtration is great. Or if you're just a feeder and you just feed too much, then adding an extra little filter in is something that you could consider in the future. Absolutely not necessary. Inside the pump, which blows the water up to the filter, there is an impeller. So about once a year or something, it's good to pull that out, give the housing a clean, give the impeller a clean. And then other than that, making sure that when you bring us a water sample down to the shop, we need to clearly see what the fish are doing, and we need to be able to test the water so we can instruct you. This tank's pretty cool as far as lights are concerned. You just tap on this little thing here and it turns blue. Tap on it, it turns off. Tap on it, it turns on. Now, basically, if you do not have live plants, the more your lights are off, the cleaner your tank stays. If you do start getting live plants, then the plants do need some light. So if you went for Anubias or rock fern or Java moss, there are some really easy to keep plants that will be fine with this light, and you probably want to give them about 6 to 8 hours a day of light. Now, if you notice the leaves turning yellow, then you may need to fertilize your plants. Some people we sell plants to, and they do absolutely nothing, and the plants grow like wildfire, and they throw them out and overgrow the tank, and other people have a completely opposite experience. So you can be a little bit reactive with your plants. So you can put them in there and see how they go, and if they're green and they grow and everyone's happy, then you don't have to do anything. On the other hand, if they start going yellow, you could start fertilizing them. And then you might find you run out of fertilizer and they just stay green. It doesn't always make sense, but you can be reactive. If you notice black algae growing all over the leaves, then you could put in some blackbeard, there's various organic carbon products that you can use to stop the black algae growing all over the plants, such as Flourish Excel. So ultimately, if you see anything going on with your tank, you just get a jar of water and a sample of water and a video of your tank running, and come down and see us, and then we can just explain whatever it is happening, and we can just make sure that we're happy with it. And if you notice your plant's falling apart, that tends to mean there's not enough light. If you notice there's holes in the leaves, or with the live plants, of course, then that might mean somebody's eating it. So they're all just things to bear in mind. And at some point, you definitely want to get a gravel cleaner. So if you've got live plants, you never want to gravel clean around the base of the plants. And with live plants, you tend to want thicker gravel. So this gravel is actually quite good for live plants. But if you're never going to have live plants, I'd rather have a thinner layer of gravel. And you do want to get a gravel cleaner for when you do a water change. So when you bring a sample down to us, we're going to be checking the ammonia and nitrite, and that's going to tell us if the filters are working. And then if we notice the nitrate or phosphate coming up, then we're going to be wanting to do more regular water changes. And I really want to do a water change out of the gravel. So I want to get the gravel cleaner in. The gravel cleaner cleans the gravel while you remove the water from the tank. And you only want to change like a quarter of the water at a time. Most people in a tank like this would change the water every 2 to 4 weeks. But ultimately, it got to do with how many fish we've got in the tank. If you have a lot more fish, then you're going to have a lot more water changes required. And I mean, looking at this tank, I would look in the future at the idea of just that second filter, because I do like the water agitating. So right now, the agitation is not so important because we've got an aerator, but if you are going to really stock it up with fish, I'd just like to see this water getting broken, because the filter sort of filters back into the water, and obviously you've got the aerator, so everything's totally fine. But if you're going to stock it up more, I'd just like to see this water get broken a little bit more, which would really only be of consequence if we started to overpopulate the tank. And ultimately, if anything doesn't make sense, just come down and see us. And then as far as feeding fish is concerned, I want to feed the fish what they eat in 30 seconds. If the fish don't eat all the food after 30 seconds, then I wouldn't feed them the next day. And I tend to feed them about 5 times a week, so that's not quite every day. And then ultimately, I'm just looking at the belly of the fish, and I want to make sure that when I look under the fish, I want to see a little bit of a belly. I definitely don't want to see it going up, and I don't want to see a big bulge either. And once again, if you bring a sample down to the shop with a little video of the tank running, we can look over the fish and we can give you advice on whether the fish are fat or skinny, and also we need to see what food you're feeding, because if your top fish are fat and your bottom fish are skinny, then you probably need to add some bottom food. If your big fish are skinny and your little fish are fat, you might need to add some bigger pellets. So there's various decisions that we can guide you on the way to make sure that your aquarium is successful as possible. But ultimately, this aquarium is very, very easy to look after, assuming we get animals that are appropriate for the tank. And then if anything doesn't make sense, then you've just really got to come down and see us.